I never made it.
I'm going to be discussing my experience in working in the FRC department, which stands for Family Resource Center in Sherwood Elementary School in Salinas. So my service site mainly depended on two jobs as a volunteer. You were either helping with donations, and what that meant was that when donations would come in, especially mainly brought by Cheryl, which was one of our main supervisors, she would bring in these donations and we were in charge to sort these donations out and make sure that they were in a good condition to be reused by other people. And if they were not, we had to dispose of them for whatever the reason might be. A lot of these donations that came in were not properly sealed or were way overused, so we couldn't really reuse those. And the other thing, which not necessarily meant we had more interactions with the families, but we were listening to the interactions that were made by Rosa, another supervisor of ours, and some of the families that we were helping and assisting. A lot of the meetings, of course, were very intense, and we were not allowed to speak to the families directly unless we were allowed to or given permission to by Rosa herself. And a lot of these families that we would sit through and listen to their meetings were very diverse in terms of what services they were seeking. The services that we offered were varied in terms of a family situation. By law, we were only, as a service through the school, we were only allowed to supply them with basic school supplies and a backpack. However, again, depending on the family's situation, we, as a service, would sometimes offer them clothing, a lot of more things that not necessarily someone would consider very helpful, but we would help them anyways. And one of the biggest things that I learned from my community service site in general was to never judge based off what a person looks like. And at first that I thought that always applied towards people who looked down. I always thought that, just because the person looks bad doesn't mean they are bad, in terms of a homeless person. However, being at the service site, I saw these families coming in, with a smile on their face. They looked like regular people. If another source were to see them from the outside, they would never have imagined that these families were in desperate need of services that ranged anywhere from shelter, clothing, and food to basic school supplies and hygienic needs. So that was one of the biggest things that I learned, of course, was to not judge a person from what they look like on the outside. A lot of the times the FRC not only offered its services, but it did look into the family's location and tried to offer additional services around the area in which they lived in. We are only allowed to supply them with the services that we offer once a year. However, we understand as volunteers and as workers and as services that are offered to homeless people that once a year is not sufficient, especially when they are the most basic needs such as rice, beans, or school supplies. We understand that it is not enough for a single family to live off a bag of beans for the rest of the year. Therefore, a lot of the times, Cheryl, or especially Rosa herself, they look into a lot of the areas which offer more regular services or even weekly services in terms of food, shelter, and other offerings that are around the area that can be accessible towards that family. Since we know it's not enough. And